It's a fresh look and a fresh start to the new year on this episode of the Scho-Zone. All right, everybody, welcome to the Scho-Zone. I am your host, Ryan Schofield, coming at you live from the DeGen in our very first episode of 2025. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. However you find me, like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that douchebag stuff that podcast hosts like myself say. Welcome aboard to 2025. And in case you haven't noticed here, this is the first time anyone has ever seen my bare face. If you've watched this podcast, which I started at the end of January of 2024. Sometime, I believe the 26th was when I decided to kick this thing off. And what a wild trip it's been between then and now, as I'm going to kind of dive into that one and just kind of expand upon some thoughts and some things to put something out there and what the plans are going forward. I have a couple. I've tried to actually do a little bit of prep here. Not that I ever like to be too prepared because I just kind of like the free flowing conversations that I do, which have been by myself lately because of my horrible planning. And I need to work to get better. That's what a lot of this is going to be about. A little bit of house cleaning for anybody, or maybe this will be a commercial as to what to see is going to be coming forward in the Scho-Zone coming in 2025. We already had someone watching. Get the hell out of here. So business as usual, as far as I'm concerned. Again, I started this in 2024. I had no direction or vision. And I will tell you one thing is that all these people that you see, if you see someone that makes money creating content and you think that that's what a loser that guy is, or, anybody could do that, you're wrong. It's difficult. Trust me. I found out it's a very, very humbling experience when you start getting into this realm here. I set the goal. I remember I started off, made the YouTube page, shared it onto my Facebook, got some subscribers immediately. And I remember, putting out a couple episodes, gaining some people here and there, and setting the goal for myself that getting to 500 subscribers in 1 year would not be difficult. That very, very much was very difficult. I finished the year at 208 subscribers. So I got to keep the same goal going for 2025. We got to get that number up to 500. And I learned some things along the way. For starters, I don't even know if I should be doing this as a video podcast. I just did it as a way of expanding things out there, putting things out there. Maybe I just was trying to market my face, maybe trying to market the face of my guests or whatever. But YouTube is easier to kind of attract the casual viewer on than it is on regular podcasting. How do I know this? I subscribe to a bunch of shit, and not shit, good stuff, I should say, that I just accidentally discovered on YouTube in 2024 that I never, ever would have. And I don't think I've subscribed to any new podcasts on any of the various podcast forms. I just kind of, YouTube just kind of picks stuff for you. So sometimes you get lucky on there. I, again, just start watching things and just kind of get caught up on them. And hopefully that's happening to you, as I got some people that are in the watching me. So thank you for that. Like, comments, or share, subscribe, all that douchebag stuff that guys like myself say. But doing a podcast, even like I'm doing right now, I think that, you have a really good idea for something. It's never as good of an idea as you think it is. In fact, really probably need to focus on quality over quantity. Again, I want to start trying to get this where I already failed at this one, but trying to get a set time where, for the time being, and I say that very, very, very emphatically, for the time being, the best days for me to record are Mondays and Wednesdays. And I'm probably going to need to be doing those sometime in the morning time, I would say, before I get caught in the shuffle, as I record this on a Monday evening, which thankfully, I guess there's no Monday Night Football tonight, so I don't have anything to really compete with. We're kind of in that little bit of that sports lull right now, I guess you could say, before we get to the grand finale of football. But learn in 2024, yeah, it's not easy doing this, coming up with new ideas, staying fresh. It reminds me of when I started doing stand-up comedy. Everybody that does stand-up comedy thinks because they're funny. That's for starters. They're me. I do this because I think I'm entertaining and I'm interesting, which, is up for debate. Maybe if I was more entertaining or more interesting, I would have more than 208 subscribers, but one at a time will get better, obviously. And then doing the repetitions of this one, this was kind of meant to be a pastime because I used to have nothing but time. Now, because of some changes in life, I seem to have less time, which I'm not going to complain about whatsoever. It's been a wonderful thing for me. But, the fact of the matter is that every idiot gets in this comedy because they think they've got a good joke or two here or there. And that, the idea that you have a good joke or two here or there and that you could actually become a comedian is where I failed on that idea, is that you think you have a joke or two, or you think you can fill time on stage. It's just like, I always make the comparison of being on a treadmill. of that, the going to work where you think you're passing so much time and you're really not. The very first time I got on stage, well, I did like 10 minutes worth of material, probably should have been like maybe 2 minutes of actual material. But anyone thinks that they can just get up there, they have all this stuff to go. So whenever somebody tells me they're going to do something like comedy or a podcast, I always ask them what it's going to be about. Me, I'm like about, I don't know, God knows how many million other people have that I'm a sports fan and a gambler and a guy that thinks they're funny. Well, congratulations. Me and another million people out here consuming or trying to create content are all doing the same thing. So I started to try to find some little niches in there, which I really didn't necessarily do. I mean, I guess the best niche I had going was when I started traveling the country to different ballparks, as I've kind of detailed throughout my page, different trips to different cities, and just kind of getting some different vantage points. I mean, really, where I think I gained the biggest traction, or where I realized I had something different, when I started making live videos of Shohei Ohtani, and all of a sudden the subscriptions started rolling in. A lot of them from not in America, I don't believe, and they're probably not tuning in as much. I'm proud to say that on a routine, I probably get about 20 to 30 views, which are, pretty consistent as far as I look at the algorithm. I get, some pretty good consistent viewers on there. It all starts somewhere. And again, I never in a million years said, okay, we're going to be, by the end of the year, this will be how I make my living. That's never even really going to be a goal of mine. I mean, it's a, reach for the moon goal, I guess I could say. But for right now, this is just something I enjoy doing. And I do get some people that do reach out to me and say they enjoy hearing from me. I really just want to use this as a way of being able to communicate with other people that I find to be interesting, because again, as somebody who hasn't had a drink in over 2 years, I don't go out to bars and have random interesting conversations anymore. It's very, very tough. I mean, I mostly have them through my sales endeavors, which I'm looking to get into some new types of sales endeavors at some point in time. Cat's out of the bag on that one. But I'm just done with retail. This is simply I'm still working in it, but I'm eventually done with it. I actually did have a guest I did need to have on about that at some point in time. Actually, a gentleman I talked to about how people can look to do that, because it's probably going to leave me behind before I leave it behind if I don't act soon. But, I've even started to learn. I expanded my horizons out there. I got on a TikTok, and I think that this is one of the biggest things that I struggle with, is that most people like to watch stuff that they hate, is what's really come down to. I use my evidence of this one is that when I post a TikTok out there and I have something I actually feel fairly knowledgeable about, you can see how long, and by the way, my social media information is all scrolling across in the bottom here. A TikTok at the Scho-Zone, clever name for a guy with this show. But I noticed that the stuff that people hate me for the most, or people disagree with the most, gets the most reactions out there. And we had a classic example of this in 2024 where, Hawk Tua girl still has they're still posting pictures of her, even though everyone can't stand her. We just constantly pay attention to things we can't stand. I did podcast episodes on this during the year, and I called it the Jersey Shore phenomenon. Remember way back in the day when the Jersey Shore came on and everyone swore they couldn't stand it, but yet it was such a popular show? That's really how the internet has kind of gone. We just really just only pay attention to the stuff we hate, or we create a lot of content out of things we hate. I'm noticing this new thing right now. I'm starting to, it's not a New Year's resolution I made. I don't make any actual real resolutions. I just try to make little improvements. But I have really gotten to the point of that. Do not engage with people that you don't like. And if you can mute them, again, I do the muting of people. I don't do unfollowing, because people know when you are not unfollowing, but I don't do the blocking of people if I can avoid it, unless I really, really have to, because then they know that you block them. And that gives them almost a sense of satisfaction, or I don't know. I just would rather them not know that I just don't care. I don't want to give them any empowerment as far as I'm concerned. But right now, there's the whole run of things is that there's just a bunch of idiots. I mean, better to be an idiot at something than to be good at something, I guess, because idiots make all the noise in this world. And that seems to be, as someone who does kind of work in the sports gambling area, does kind of, find himself in that realm. Twitter is full of nothing but the most obnoxious gamblers that are just doing ways of getting attention. And it's working, because some clown kid can, and I'm going to cite this one in particular. I don't even know what his name is, because I blocked and removed it. I'm not going to view his page or anything. But this douchebag kid who apparently made some money on freaking on trading cards or something or whatever has now been getting a bunch of attention of him going to different sports books, placing bets, talking about how he's getting limited, and citing that he's got a play in the algorithm. All these people that claim they're getting limited, I mean, all of the real true pros can kind of sniff through them, and then they are also further empowering them by their retweeting them and commenting on them, and just nothing's getting done on here. I don't even know where I'm going on any of this. I'm just kind of doing my usual riff and rant. I need to get better at this one because, again, my big thing I need to focus on in all areas of life, and this is how I'm going to segue into my football talk, is need to focus on quality and not quantity. And that's exactly what I did this past year. I was just putting episodes out there. Maybe a couple of them had some quality, but most of them were just for the sake of quantity. We need to get back to making that everything, okay? And I'm using football as the example of this because here we are. I did not really comment. I mean, I haven't really been watching as much. And part of that is because of my schedule. The other part of that, when I do have the free time, I am not finding the quality of what I have grown accustomed to. Okay. Am I that old man yelling at clouds, or am I just somebody that has just noticed the changing of the guard? Or have my tastes just changed? I don't know, but I do not watch football with the same love and joy that I once used to. Kind of the same way that happened. This has been a long time coming for me with basketball. Again, I find it crazy to believe, but at one point in time, you could probably say I was as big of an NBA fan in college basketball than I was of any sports. Now they exist without me even knowing about them. I do want to say it's because I think of a lack of quality of play, or I just don't, care for it. It's just me just finding better things to prioritize my time with, I guess. And I guess as I'm turning 40 this year, I'm just kind of realizing, am I really gonna, reflect back in my life? I'm not. There's a good chance. I mean, the average life expectancy. I mean, I did a life insurance appointment this year at 39 years old, and they're telling me that the life expectancy is 78 years old. I'm just teeing off on the back nine right now. I mean, and now I've got some good luck on my side, or I've made some changes that maybe I might get a 19th hole in there here or there, which, ironically is me eliminating the 19th hole, which allows me to say that. But am I going to spend the rest of the time watching all these meaningless games just because I have bets on them? And that's kind of become the thing of that. I've centered this personality of this show around sports and betting. And I'm getting to this point right now of that, I don't care as much as I used to. I've kind of have loosely built this brand about something that I might not even give that much of a shit about. That was something that I noticed during my family Christmas, of the idea that we could get through a family Christmas on my dad's side of the family without there being one heavy sports argument. It was a foreign concept to me 10 years ago. This year, the collective was just that. Does anybody care anymore? Is it really that big of a deal? We're all in that nostalgic phase, and it's across different generations. I mean, I don't know if we're just going to look back and, last year I did the worst thing for myself. Was I actually, one of the beautiful things you can do on this YouTube, and how you can just randomly discover things, and how someone may randomly discover the Scho-Zone one of these days, is you can just go back and watch anything, or eventually the algorithm makes suggestions to you. And I actually started watching some old 1980s football games, 1970s football games, not just being because I used to be somebody that when I was younger, I used to bash the previous eras too. And things change, and all you can hope to do is, educate and just make things better, hope that the next generation is better off than the one that you came from. And I definitely was somebody who dismissed a lot of, I just looked at statistics, didn't watch videos, and used to make the same conclusions everyone else does. Now the statistics are just so out of this world, but are they really, actually, as I would say, of that here we are in, I guess I can say this is my proof point of that. I actually had someone reach out to me about this. Again, a conversation that's going nowhere with myself, but that's just how I do things. We're talking football again right now. But thinking back to how Peyton Manning, back in the 16 game schedule, had set passing records that are still not even being touched in the 17 game schedule. And this was the Peyton Manning who was post neck surgery. And that Broncos team, yeah, they had some solid, but there was an all-time talent on that team. I mean, he had Wes Welker in the slots, Demaryius Thomas, who I believe RIP actually on Demaryius Thomas, first-round draft pick. Julian Thomas, who was really, really good with Peyton Manning and then signed a contract with the Jaguars. But 5,400 passing yards, I think 50 some odd touchdown passes. We haven't seen anything like that. And this was now with guys in 17 game seasons. There was both quantity to what Manning did, and there was quality to that. Whereas, again, I look at with the way that the game has changed right now. Again, mind you, they did have cover too. They did have two high safeties then. Peyton Manning just was somebody who just always found the soft spot in them. It's amazing when a guy can run with his brain and not run with his legs, which seems to be, again, too much, which, again, I getting bounced all over the place on this, but I actually saw this, and there's just too much content out there, I think, to consume, where now people to just have someone to talk about have to be different. And I might even find myself being guilty of that myself. But this was actual conversations I heard yesterday after the week 18 football games. That just sounded weird saying that week 18 after week 18 football games. But there were talks were about the New England Patriots who lost the number one pick. And they were talking about, do they trade Drake May to be able to get the number one pick to get to draft Shedeur Sanders? Or there was this idea that would Joe Milton actually amount to anything? This was actual conversations I heard. It just must have been, hey, we got to fill time. We got to talk about something. So maybe if we say something ridiculous, we can talk about how ridiculous it is. We can toss back some ideas. But that was actual conversations I actually heard yesterday. Now, back to this point on here. The week 18 of football, we didn't get, more good games out of it. I mean, there was one meaningful game last night, and that game was terrible too, by the way. I mean, could have been better, I guess, but I guess as I would say Sam Darnold is just going to cost me some money, because all year I was saying of that, okay, the shoe, I've seen this act before. The other shoe will drop eventually, and then Sam Darnold will return to a pumpkin. Well, then he just made me look horrible for an entire football season, only to then do exactly what we said he was going to do last night. What you saw last night with Sam Darnold, again, I'm recording this on Monday, the 6th of January. This is after the football season has ended. You saw a guy who looked like he was playing in his first playoff game. He's not a rookie to the NFL anymore, but he's a rookie to playing in a meaningful game. And he looked like a rookie last night as far as the happy feet. The Lions just basically said, we're going to make this guy beat us. And he couldn't. I mean, he was missing every throw high. He looked like Trevor Lawrence with his accuracy, would be the way I describe it. The Vikings, that score is just so misleading, where, again, that's classic. If you look at the final score of that game, like, boy, the Lions blew them out. I mean, it was a crime for about 3 quarters. The Vikings weren't winning that game. Red zone trip after red zone trip being foiled. Should have kicked field goals when they didn't. Should have had a safety in there somewhere. I mean, just hurried, rushed, pressure-filled throws that Sam Darnold did not make. I mean, there should have been a couple touchdowns for sure in the red zone. I mean, anytime you have Justin Jefferson where he beats his guy at the line of scrimmage and you just threw it 20 feet over his head is basically the way of looking at it. Got to wonder if the Vikings are going to be a one-hit wonder on that one. And then is it 1 step forward, 2 steps back from them? Because now they have a decision to make. They just drafted a quarterback. Do they pay Sam Darnold? For Sam Darnold, does he go elsewhere? And I mean, he's seen that if he has a great offensive coach and great offensive talent around him, he's capable of doing some things. Does he chase the payday? I mean, he's made some money throughout the years. It's not a decision I can make. It's certainly no ginger. No one's looking to pay me a bunch of money, obviously, what I'm doing. But, so now we added the extra playoff team, which we're now going to have a couple of games coming up this week, which, I mean, is there any playoff game that we're really excited for? I mean, maybe the Eagles and the Packers is interesting for all the wrong reasons. I mean, I'm mostly curious to see what the Eagles look like. I mean, is Jalen Hurts going to be back? Jordan Love, he looked great in the postseason last year. It's about it as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he had some little flashes of brilliance during the season last year, but he already got his big giant contract. I personally don't think that he's anything special. I mean, Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts playing each other for me is big, because it's can you show me more Super Bowl as far as I'm concerned? Because both are guys who I believe signed contracts that were offered to them prematurely, where I would just say, hey, can we do this 2 years in a row? And again, Jalen Hurts maybe look terrible this year too, because what did he do? After I said I want to see him do it a second time, he basically did this year. Now, again, that just could be an offensive juggernaut, that he's just the guy, that's just got the keys to the car on that one, as far as with great wide receivers. The best running back in football being Saquon Barkley, although, as I kind of would say, if Jahmyr Gibbs had a full season of workload, could he handle it? Because if he could handle it, I think he would have more production than Saquon Barkley had, but different conversation. Getting off course, as we typically do in the Scho-Zone, of course. But, we've got the extra playoff games in there. I don't think we're getting any higher quality of playoff matches. I almost wish that we had. I think that if you get less teams in there, you get higher quality. Now, again, the NFL shot themselves in the foot when they made 4 divisions, and now we unfortunately always have to have those 4 division winners in the playoffs. You wouldn't just want it to be division winners in there, because the fact of the matter is that the second best record in the NFC is going to be the 5 seed. Wonderful system they devised there. And then also now we can kind of segue this into the college football playoff. We're down to the Final Four. Again, obviously, all of this, college football Final Four, getting more teams involved. And what do we have? We have Penn State and Texas, and we have Notre Dame and Ohio State. So those are the teams left. I forget the mat, or is it? Yeah, it's Ohio State, Texas, and Penn State, Notre Dame. Just old faces in familiar places as far as competing for national titles. We finally had one. I mean, there was one good playoff game in the entire mix out of that one, and that was one that started off as terrible. The Texas-Arizona State game, which I'll be the first to admit. I mean, my Twitter feed is just, if I was to ever make it anywhere, Old Takes Exposed is just going to have such a field day with me. Or if I was ever making anywhere, all the, the people that go smelling other people's shit, I'm sure, I had it advised to me I should clean up my Twitter from like way back in the day when I was a drunken buffoon. I don't have the time to do that. I don't even have the time for my own professional sake to do that. So I got to find out what type of person who, if I ever gave anybody a reason to care, would ever actually go back that far and read through all the bullshit that I did when I was a younger, immature person. Me, I think they would have brought to my attention. I'd like to respond to it and say, hey, yeah, I was a fucking idiot back in 2011, but what are we going to do? That's who I was. So, yeah, quality is not always better, or quantity is not always the way to go. Quality is the way to go. And we're just getting further and further away from that. And, maybe as I was triggered, these thoughts were triggered on a podcast I was listening to this afternoon when I was doing my errands about the day. But somebody brought up the idea of that. I mean, week 18 was as awful as it was. Let's face it. If it wasn't for some players getting some incentives, most of those games had no storylines to them whatsoever. Maybe getting to see some backups here and there, but effectively week 18 of the preseason, it was a nice slip there, actually. Week 18 of the NFL season, it replaced week 4 of the preseason. Pretty much the same thing for everybody. I mean, again, nobody really even cared. I mean, the Rams didn't even care about seeding. They cared about getting their guys healthy. Most of those games were pretty meaningless. I mean, again, the off chance the Bengals could have maybe made the playoffs, I think was one of them, or the Dolphins, but when you have a team that had everything locked up like the Chiefs did, that Chiefs-Broncos game, which was kind of the straw that was stirring the drink for interest, that one was over pretty quickly. Again, I thought on an off chance, maybe Carson Wentz getting 11 points. It was not a good day for Gingers yesterday. Let's just put it that way. Andy Dalton, I mean, not that he was ever going to get the job back in Carolina, but seeing what Bryce Young did, he's taking the Panthers to levels that Anthony Dalton did. I mean, Andy Dalton's career is basically over as far as he's just going to be a backup. Not that this was ever going to be about Andy Dalton. Carson Wentz had one chance to maybe get himself one last opportunity to start in the NFL. He blew it. That was just, unless he was told to blow, but that was just pretty god awful. And Sam Darnold's first moments of, to excel in the shining lights, I guess we'd call it. He was a disappointment. So bad day for the Gingers. The Scho-Zone is not helping the Gingers out whatsoever, but just go with it. But again, football needs to focus on quality, not quantity. Hopefully now that we're down to the final 4 NFL college football games, at least we're seeing the jerseys and the fan bases. I mean, the environments for those games are going to be great because of the teams that are going to be there. But I'm not willing to write off this expanded college football playoff just yet. I mean, obviously, everything needs a starting point on there. I never liked the idea of the added teams on there, mostly because of the conversations that led up to it and the subsequent ones that happened in round 1, is that we were talking about whether or not teams that had 3 losses belonged in the playoffs, which I just never want to believe that. But on the same point, too, though, is that we have 2-loss Ohio State looking like the best team in college football right now, or they're the favorites to win it all right now. And we used to have a hard time with the idea of a 2-loss team being argued of having a chance of playing for the national title. I don't know. It's just one of those things that with the way Ohio State is, that works for them. You lose at Michigan this year at home, you should just be default. You should just not have. They did not even win their conference. Okay, they had to do it as an at-large bid. Which, by the way, teams that had that whole portion just got jacked up. The Boise States being buys, cute story, gave them their chance. We need to work on that one. That can't happen anymore, which, again, is probably going to be happening, is that, we gave them your shot. The rich will probably get rich. The poor will get poorer. They'll expand the playoffs. It'll mean an extra SEC and an extra Big Ten team gets in there. And then the other teams will now have to try to prove themselves, which I have no problem with them proving themselves. But, again, adding more games did not create more quality. And honestly, I don't know. Maybe they just never did care, and I was just naive as a kid. But I do remember bowl games that used to be meaningless bowl games, used to at least be played like they had meaning. Part of, again, the overexposure of things with the quality and the quantity is that, what used to happen is that not every game used to be on television. I think that was part of the reason that the quality of the games that I watched when I was younger were better, was because that may have been the one time that you played on national television. I mean, I remember the first time I ever saw Calvin Johnson play in college was in a bowl game, because, okay, that was Georgia Tech actually got a standalone game. There was reason for me to watch it, but that used to be kind of the coming out party. It used to be the idea that you were going to get a chance to play on TV in those games. People actually showed up for. Now it's almost like they don't want to play in those games. They don't want to be found out. I don't know, but NFL playoffs, I'm not excited about the wild card round. I mean, it's just, it's comical at this point. That's the Houston Texans will once again make the playoffs. An expansion team in an expanded playoff. I mean, granted, in a division that was expanded, is always playing in the least desirable football game. They're not playing the Steelers. They're playing who the fuck are they playing again? Oh, yeah, playing the Chargers. I mean, the year it's going to be sold to CJ Stroud and Justin Herbert. And again, one guy is going to get a playoff win out of that one. One guy will not. Or actually, so CJ Stroud, he already does have a playoff win, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, does he? Wait. I should know these things. Yeah, CJ Stroud does have a playoff win under his belt. Justin Herbert can get off the schneid and get himself a playoff win, because that's going to be held against him, is that he does not have a playoff win. And if he doesn't, then, well, we're just going to keep piling on, and it'll just further solidify to me that the Chargers are just a cursed franchise, I guess. But again, more is not doing more for the NFL in this case. Really, we're just coming down to that we were adding more teams into the tournament. In the NFC, one of the teams that made the playoffs could be a spoiler in there. Again, I do look at it as that the Bucs, they're not the best team by far. They're not going to win the Super Bowl, but can the Bucs knock somebody off? I think they can. And that's actually going to be maybe a fun matchup that comes out of this expanded playoff again, is that, we're getting the Commanders are playing the Bucs, which actually those I don't believe are any of the expanded playoff teams there. But that's going to be nice, fun to see that we're going to get Baker Mayfield and Jaden Daniels. They're fun players to watch. Their teams aren't that great, but that's just I think the theme of this show is I did a show just to do a show, and I hadn't done one for the year, but going forward, I think I need to get off of this. I need to get back on to having guests. I need to, because I'm an idiot and I invested money in a yearly StreamYard subscription, I feel the need to record something to justify the expense. But maybe I just, like a gambler, just take that as a sunk loss. Maybe the video format is just not working out the way it is. It's just me on here is not doing it. Maybe I need to learn how to produce the videos a little bit more, or I need to get back to having guests on. But it's just been one thing after the other in this life, and I'm just kind of the podcast is taking it aside. But again, I just wanted to come on here with a fresh face, with a fresh start to 2024, 2025. Jesus, we're losing it here. We're losing it here. Everybody, thank you for tuning in and listening. This was just a little brief word salad out here. I am going to trying to make it an effort to have something out every Monday and Wednesday, and I really need to get fixed to a time, but I basically just show up for my job on time. That's about it. Everything else, it's really, really tough for me to hold to a schedule. And that needs to be my New Year's resolution to the Scho-Zone audience, to be better for 2025, be better every episode, every week, every take, and start preparing for this like it's actually a job. Because if you treat it like a job, eventually we'll become one, would be the ideal here. But nobody is going to add a subscription based on watching this. Again, I did want, the one way I was doing some things, but it was starting to get expensive. I was doing those live blackjack streams. That's just not cutting it anymore. I need to find someone that separates me on this one, or I'm going to start making appearances on more other shows. I have had some lovely experiences. Again, the podcast game is kind of fun. You meet some interesting people here and there. And I looked forward to trying to meet some of these new people to have on this show and book them when we get on there. So just as I'm getting ready to wrap it up, someone new just started joining and listening here. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that douchebag stuff that podcast hosts like myself say. I just ranted and raved to no avail for a little while. I will be better for you, I promise, next time. So thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Scho-Zone. One step forward, two steps back. Let's get better next time.